Hello guys. Welcome to MCL True Story. Before we dive into today's story, I would like to remind you guys to smash the likes button, leave a comment, subscribe and turn on the notifications icon. Today's story is gonna be a long one. I will advise you to grab some drinks and popcorn and relax as we enjoy today's story. And here we go. My son stole his dead mother's ring for his girlfriend, and now he won't talk to me after making him return it. To say I was mad as hell would be an understatement. I, 46M, have a son Jake, 23M and fake name. Jake was a good kid growing up. So him doing this was a complete shock to me. I have a daughter too, Amber, 16F and also fake name. When my wife passed away from COVID nearly 2 years ago, she already had a will in place. She was immunocompromised due to a prior condition she was diagnosed with a decade before she passed. She made sure she had a will set just in case anything happened to her. In said will she divided her assets between our children. And Jake got his cut as he was already 21. He used that money to put a down payment on a condo, and he also got his mother's car. But the will stated that my daughter was to get all of my wife's jewelry. That included a vintage gold ring with a diamond that had a light blue sapphire on each side of it. That ring has been passed down for generations in my wife's family. It was originally her grandmother's wedding band. Her husband was a jeweler and handcrafted the ring for her himself. It was passed down to my wife's mother when her grandmother died, and then to my wife herself when her mother passed. It along with the other jewelry was to all go to my daughter. When my wife passed away, my grief was intense. But I powered through it for the sake of my family and they supported me 100%. So the betrayal from my son was just a rusty knife in the back to me. For the past 8 months Jake has been dating Sarah, fake name. She has my son wrapped around her finger. She loves jewelry as she adorns herself with it a lot. My son mentioned the family jewels my wife left his sister to Sarah one day, and Sarah really wanted to see them. So Jake went into my room when no one was home and showed them to her. He later admitted to me that he'd done this, and I was angry. But I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. Jake came to me a week ago and begged for that ring from his mother's family jewels so that he could propose with it. He said Sarah had fallen in love with the ring when she saw it before, and he just knew it'd be the perfect ring to ask her to marry him with. He seemed completely convinced I'd be jumping for joy for him wanting to propose. But instead, I told him that I was not the one to ask as the ring belongs to Amber. And I wouldn't have him pressuring her to give it up either. For a fair chance, I'd allow him to explain his reasons and ask her for it once. But only once. Without pressuring her. And if she refuses for any reason, that will be the end of it. Jake agreed and asked Amber for the ring right in front of me. But she told him no because she wanted to keep it in the family jewels, and has always loved that ring. To her, it's priceless. She couldn't bear to ever give it up. I told Jake that was that, and to not press the matter further. Jake left looking very unhappy about not getting the ring. But I thought he'd let it go and look into finding a similar one. But he came back another day while I was at work to talk to his sister after she got home from school. He and Amber got into a huge fight about the ring and Amber called me crying. I called Jake and told him to get out of my house and leave his sister alone. Jake yelled at me that he should have just as much right to the ring as his sister, because my wife was his mother too. But I reminded him he got a lot of his mother's money, and her car. The jewelry is Amber's, and only hers. He hung up on me and Amber soon texted me that he left very angry. Later, right before I left work, my daughter called and told me that Jake came back. He walked in dressed in a suit, went into my room and took something. Then left without saying anything to Amber. She tried to keep him from leaving, but he shoved her out of the way. I rushed home as soon as my shift was over and checked my wife's jewelry box. The ring was gone. I immediately called Jake, but he didn't answer. So I messaged him that I'll get police involved if he doesn't return the ring. Using it to propose won't stop me from taking it back. That finally made him talk to me, and he tried to say that I couldn't do that to him because he's my son. I said I can and will because he outright stole the ring. He'd better bring it back right away, or I would take drastic measures. Well, he phoned me right after that, and in a whisper he said that it was too late. He'd taken his girlfriend out to dinner and proposed to her with the ring. He hadn't had it for more than an hour by this point. Yet the ring was already on her finger. I said that was his problem. He stole the ring, he can bring it back. It's not his, and I will do whatever it takes to make sure it's returned. And if that means going to police and blowing the whole situation up, then so be it. I'll file a report, I'll even get a lawyer. Jake started crying and saying I couldn't do this to him. I told him tough luck. He stole from both his sister and dead mother. I would not back down until the ring was returned. Jake wouldn't stop crying and making excuses. So I told him to have the ring back by morning, or I would be moving forward with legal action. Jake is my son, but he still broke the law. I couldn't overlook what he did. He said he'd be by in the morning to talk, and ended the call while crying even more. Well, Jake did show up in the morning, and brought his girlfriend with him to try and guilt us. Turns out she not only knew he stole the ring, she wanted to keep it anyway because she was completely in love with the ring since she first laid eyes on it. I told her I didn't care. She could have a jeweler make a copy of it or something. But the original doesn't belong to her, it belongs to my daughter and deceased wife. Jake begged me one more time not to make her give it back, but I and my daughter stood firm. Return the ring or face the police and maybe even a potential lawsuit. Jake's girlfriend pulled the ring off her finger and dropped it in my daughter's hands, called me an evil bastard, then left my house in tears. Jake started screaming at me that I may have just destroyed his relationship. I retorted him that he did this to his own relationship by stealing a ring that didn't belong to him. What kind of son steals from his own sister and dead mother? That is beyond terrible. Jake had nothing more to say to me and walked out to follow after his girlfriend. I didn't get anyone else involved in the situation, but Jake did. He tried getting support from friends and family, but he got the exact opposite reaction he'd hoped for. They were all mad at him over what he'd done. I got many phone calls and messages from people offering me condolences and saying they were not on Jake's side. I tried to do damage control, but now everybody knows. It's been a week now, and Jake's refused to speak to me. I've sent him detailed pictures of the ring, just in case he wanted a jeweler to replicate it. But making a copy would be very expensive unless he used fake stones. Thus far there has been no response. I don't know what the situation is with his girlfriend. If she even still is his girlfriend after what happened. But I still stand by the fact that Jake had to return the ring. I have since had all my wife's jewelry placed in a safety deposit box that only I have access to. The jewelry will remain there until my daughter is 21. It may even stay there if she wants to keep it safe that way. I know I'm in the right to have reclaimed the ring. However, I don't want my son to hate me and I don't want the family to hate him. If anyone has any advice as to how to better mediate this situation without me giving away the ring or spending a lot of money, I'm all ears. Update: my son stole his dead mother's ring for his girlfriend, and is now blaming me for his relationship ending. Well, my son's girlfriend Sarah has officially broken up with him. He's devastated and blaming me. Some previously pointed out that I gave him too much credit in saying he was a good kid. He used to be. But the person he is now, I just do not recognize. Whether he was always like this deep down, or if he just fell for the wrong person and let her change him for the worse is a mystery to me. But it doesn't justify what he did. After I forced him and Sarah to return the stolen ring, she apparently spent days crying in bed, then told Jake that she didn't want a different ring no matter how much he told her he'd get her another one. She wanted my deceased wife's ring. She couldn't imagine possibly having a different one for their engagement now that it had already been on her hand, even though it was only for a few hours and stolen. The last time I met someone who cried that much about being made to return stolen property, they were 4 years old. I heard more than one person say they thought Sarah was being a big baby about it. The situation was no secret because Jake spilled the beans looking for support to the whole family and his/Sarah's friends. As previous readers know, that backfired badly for them. Well, after Jake's failed gambit for support, all the local drama lovers latched onto the situation like barnacles to a boat. They kept messaging me with more information, even though I wasn't asking. So I was being kept in the loop even though Jake and Sarah weren't talking to me. My son had the pictures I sent him so that he could try and replicate the ring, and he took them to a jeweler. The jeweler said he could make a similar ring based on the pictures. But he'd want to closely examine the original and take proper measurements to make an evaluation of the stones and metal in order to see what it'd take to make as close of a copy as possible. Jake waited for a while before swallowing his pride to call me again. His girlfriend was finally at least entertaining the idea of making a copy. But she wanted it to be an exact copy, down to the smallest detail. They called me a couple days after I made my original post and asked me to bring the ring to a jeweler to get a proper quote on the cost of making a duplicate. I agreed to take an extended lunch break and meet at the local jeweler. I got the ring from the safety deposit box and guarded it closely. I could see Sarah's eyes light up with greed the moment she saw it again. She reached her hand out and asked to wear it just one more time, then pouted like a child when I told her no. For all I knew, she'd take off running the second she had it. The jeweler looked at the ring very closely for a little while, and said it was worth more than we thought and to copy it would cost a lot. The ring was decades old, and expertly crafted by my wife's grandfather sometime in the 1940s. The jeweler singed its praises even. The diamond and sapphires were decently large for an engagement ring, and the ring itself didn't use a slim gold band, but a pretty thick and heavy one made of what was estimated to be 18-karat gold. But there was more. The stones themselves were set in platinum, and the ring had many ornate floral carvings on it. The stones alone needed to make an identical ring were more than Jake's current budget. Not including antique value, making a copy of a ring like that with that variety of materials would cost a lot in time and labor because every part of it would have to be handcrafted. It was 5 times what Jake had saved. The best he could have done would be to make a down payment and then spend years in debt. Sarah enthusiastically wanted Jake to have the ring made anyway, but the cost was just too much. So the jeweler suggested they have one made that just looks the same. It didn't need to be made of the exact same materials. They could use a setter stone that just looked similar to diamond, and replace the platinum with a similar metal I can't remember the name of. It would have reduced cost by a lot. There was also a suggestion of looking for a modern ring that looks similar that's already made, which would be far cheaper as well. In fact, the jeweler already had 3 rings set aside that all looked somewhat similar with a central diamond and sapphires, all very reasonably priced. Jake was all for either idea when Sarah suddenly slapped him while calling him a cheap broke-ass wannabe, then turned on her heel to me and called me an evil bastard again for taking the original ring back because it had already been given to her when Jake proposed, and should still be hers regardless. Then she held up her hand in the manner one does when they expect you to put a ring on their finger, and outright demanded the ring back while saying it was her right to wear it, and that my daughter wouldn't need it because it'd go to waste with her. She actually said it's not like my daughter would be doing the proposing to anyone since a man could just get a different ring for her someday. Oh boy, did that make me angry. She clearly noticed because she took a couple of steps back. I looked her dead in the eye and said that my wife's family ring will never be hers. It wasn't Jake's to give away and he knew it. That's why he went out of his way to steal it while I wasn't home, because he hoped I wouldn't demand it back if he used it. But neither he nor she ever had a right to it. Then I said that it's entitled people like her that are what's wrong with the world now. She acts like whatever she wants should be handed to her, and she's lusted after my wife's ring ever since Jake first showed it to her. That whole speech was a bit long-winded with some conjecture, I know, but I just couldn't hold myself back verbally anymore. My wife used to tell me that if I wanted to insult someone, I always figured out exactly what to say. After I said all of that to Sarah's face, she aimed to slap me too. But I guess the look in my eyes was enough to make her turn away and storm out instead while very loudly making some sort of unintelligible tantrum noises that hurt my ears. She even intentionally knocked down a counter display on her way out. Jake was glaring at me with absolute rage, but didn't say anything until I asked him why he was with this awful woman. He just said that he loved her and followed after. To his credit, she is very beautiful, but it's really just skin deep. Sarah wouldn't talk to Jake for a while, and then a few days later told him they were through because she felt like he didn't value her enough to get her the ring she deserved, and that she couldn't imagine having a miser like me as a father-in-law. She said she felt thoroughly humiliated by me and cried that people all think she's a gold digger now. But I don't think they are wrong. I mean, she slapped my son just for suggesting they make a cheaper version of an expensive ring he could not afford, then threw a massive tantrum just because I wouldn't hand over the original when she demanded it. That's the behavior of a gold digger if I've ever seen any. And while it is an assumption on my part, exactly how long would Sarah have stayed with my son if someone rich came along and swept her off her feet? Would she have been inclined to still stand by him? Something tells me not so. I honestly feel like she just wanted the ring and nothing else. Right after the incident with the breakup, Jake did try to get in my house again while I wasn't home. To do what I have no idea. But if I were to speculate, he may have been after the cash in my gun safe, or thought the family jewels were still in the house. I hadn't told him at that point that I'd had them stored away in a deposit box. I really didn't want to think my own son would break in for either of those reasons. But he stole from us once, he could do it again. Someone here suggested I replace the locks on my house, and I did. So Jake's key would no longer work. I'm looking into getting cameras put in now too. My daughter Amber called me after Jake showed up and said she was terrified while he was banging on the front door and demanding to be let in. I called his cell and he didn't pick up, but I guess it spooked him because Amber said he left right after his phone started ringing. He has a set ringtone for me, so he knew it was me calling in an instant. Jake called later that evening, but before he could start yelling at me, I demanded to know what the hell he was doing trying to break into my house while I wasn't home earlier. He scared his sister and she nearly called police. Jake dodged the question by being angry about me changing the locks because I don't trust him. I said, "Damn right I don't trust him. Not after what he did." Jake fired back that I couldn't just be happy for him and that if his mom was still alive, she'd have wanted him to use the ring to propose. I swore at and said that if she wanted that, she'd have willed it to him. So he began whining and saying it was all my fault. He explained exactly what Sarah said when she broke up with him, and how she called me a miser, among other things, then ranted about how I always thought Sarah was never good enough for him. I pointed out he was putting words in my mouth. I never said she wasn't good enough for him. I barely knew Sarah and I never once got in the way of him being with her till he stole the ring. He tried to deny that, but I asked him when I had ever said anything bad about Sarah prior to the ring incident. He really sounded like he was thinking hard, but even he couldn't remember any actual time because I barely saw this woman ever while they were dating. I wasn't even aware they were dating till at least 3 months had gone by in their relationship. But that was all beside the point. What the hell was he trying to get into my house for this time? He refused to answer. So I answered for him. I said if he was after the ring, or any of the other family jewels. They've been moved to a secure safe location only I have access to. If he was trying to break into my safe for my emergency cash fund, there's no way he'd get it open. If he was there to do any sort of harm to his sister, I'd kick his ass myself. I may have hit the nail in the head with at least one of those things, because Jake just had a long silent pause on the line. Then he told me he's made up his mind to put in for a transfer at his job and sell his condo. He wants to move as far away as possible and never speak to me again. His last words to me were to have a nice life with my favorite child. I don't understand how my son has so completely changed on this level in just a year. I never actually called Sarah a manipulative gold digger until recently. I said she had my son wrapped around her finger and she loves jewelry. Though I guess that's not all that different in the long run. But in truth she is a manipulative gold digger. Especially after the drama act she put on to try and keep a ring that was never hers. I mean, she spent days in bed crying over a ring she knew was stolen and then had her huge tantrum at not being able to get it back or copy it. Now because of her, my son has chosen to wash his hands of me and his sister altogether. I am devastated. But at the same time furious that my son would do such things just to appease this witch of a woman he'd only been dating 8 months. That's not enough time dating before proposing. I dated my wife for over 2 years before popping the question. I shudder to think what things would have been like if that witch had married my son. I know Jake is going to blame me for a long time and I'm not sure if we'll ever speak again. I hope one day we can reconcile, but for now I think we need time apart. Amber is also very upset. She's extremely thankful I got the ring back for her, but she's just as shocked as I was that Jake has become like he is now. She's referring to him as a brute for how he shoved her aside when he stole the ring, and also calling him a simp. Whatever that means. Thankfully she has a great support system with me and the rest of the family. Something I know Jake doesn't have right now. Multiple family members have called or messaged him to tell him off. His now former best friend even came to me to apologize. He and Jake got in a nasty fight over what he'd done. When his own best friend since elementary school didn't see things from his side, Jake cut him off too. Jake's ex-girlfriend Sarah also got in trouble with her own family. Her parents contacted me to ask for my side of the story and then apologized for their daughter's behavior. They only knew a small bit of what happened, but were appalled to hear about the way she'd acted. Like Jake, they said she used to be a much kinder person, but in the past few years she's changed so much. They are severely disappointed in her. They were also covering half of the rent to her current apartment, and are now telling her that when her lease is over, they will not be renewing it with her. She can either pay the full rent herself, or look for somewhere else to live. Now she's going around cursing my name and saying this is all my fault. What is it with people these days? It's like ever since all those memes about entitled people on the internet have exploded, it just made more people like them. When I was Jake's age, I only saw people like that on rare occasions. Now they're everywhere. I've seen 2 in the local supermarket this year even. They're spreading their toxicity like a flood on the world. I can only hope one day my son comes to his senses and finds happiness again. Whether or not he chooses to speak with me ever again, I'll hold out hope he'll one day return to being the kind person he once was. Update 2. My son's ex was obsessed with the ring. I'll start this off by asking that people please stop messaging me for pictures of the ring. I've gotten many asking me to see it for various reasons. Some even because they want a similar ring made as well. Well, I made my daughter aware of this Reddit account, and she's proud of me for doing it, but she doesn't want pictures of the ring online. That's her decision to make because the ring is hers. I don't need to question her as to why. I just need to respect her decision. I also don't like the idea of posting pictures of it because if it gets copied by total strangers, then it'd no longer be unique. I was willing to let my son copy the ring because it was a family matter, but I won't be posting it for everyone to see and replicate as they please. I've already long deleted the pictures of the ring I sent Jake, and the ring is locked away in a bank vault right now. It will not remain there permanently, as I intend to get a better home safe to keep it in when I can afford it. In the past few weeks since my original post, I did have cameras installed, and I'm thankful I did. For those wondering if my son and Sarah would get back together, no, they did not. My son is apparently really selling his condo. He's not spoken to me since our last phone conversation, where he told me to have a nice life with my favorite child after not getting his way. I have been to see my lawyer about my estate, and got my will altered. I haven't written my son out, but he's lost a lot of the things he would have otherwise inherited for the time being. After having some time to think, I've realized I just can't feel remorse for Jake anymore after his actions as of late. My daughter Amber calling him a simp seems to be an apt description, once I found out what that meant. But I just don't want to be angry or sad about it anymore. Neither emotion is doing me any good. So for now I'm just going to do my best to let it go and move on. Jake seems to plan on moving on without us anyway. Hopefully in time he'll understand what he did wrong, but I can't change his mind for him. I did run into my son's ex Sarah at a random place in town. She spotted me while I was with one of my friends in the middle of the local shopping mall. She called out to me while we were in front of a bunch of people and started booing me and calling me a greedy miser. I didn't really have to say anything to her because my friend laughed at her and called her a thief and a gold-digging bitch who just wanted my dead wife's ring because she couldn't have it. I saw half the crowd turn to look at her at once when he said that. Sarah flipped us off and stormed away while cursing my name and knocking over anything in her path. This included a small child, whom started crying in an instant. When she realized she'd hurt the kid, Sarah took off running. My friend and I helped the very pregnant mother of the child in calming the kid down, and thankfully the kid was okay. Sarah showed up at my house later to yell that it's all my fault. Her friends are all saying she's a gold digger now, and won't hang out with her anymore. I said she is a gold digger because of what she did. She never had a right to my wife's ring, and she cried for days about it like a child, then broke up with my son just because he couldn't afford what she wanted. That's all something a gold digger would do. I'm not at fault just because she wanted my dead wife's ring so bad. And I'll make damn sure she never sees it again. What came next was more unintelligible screaming from her as she stomped back to her car. I'd hoped that was the end of it, but that girl just wouldn't leave well enough alone. For those thinking Sarah and Jake's personality shifts were due to drugs, I'm not sure whether or not to tell you I'm sorry that isn't the case. It was all them. Which in Jake's case is a harder pill to swallow because it means he has no excuse for such a radical shift in behavior. Sarah was arrested last week for attempting to break into my house. The cameras I had installed caught her sneaking into my backyard and trying to break in. She tried to break open my back door with an axe, and that tripped the alarm I had installed. She ran off, but the cameras in front of the house caught video of both her and her car very clearly in my driveway. She also left the axe with her fingerprints on it on the ground before she ran. When police got there, she was long gone, but they later found her at her apartment. They initially just wanted to arrest her for breaking my door and trespassing, but she went crazy on them and wound up getting pinned to the ground and frog marched out. This woman definitely has something mentally wrong with her. A few days after Sarah was arrested, I spoke to her parents again. They offered to pay for the broken door and then filled me in on some of the details. It seems drugs were not involved. They told me she was given drug tests at the station and her system came back clean. Since she wasn't on drugs, I don't think Jake was either. But Sarah was found to be very mentally unwell. So I guess it was just her crazy that was contagious. Her parents promised me that I'll never have to deal with her again, as they plan to move her out of town once they've dealt with the legalities of her situation. They haven't contacted me again since. But I wouldn't say it's my business that they do either. I'm guessing though that Sarah likely needs major mental health treatment. So in a sense I do feel a little sorry for her now. I knew Jake had to be aware of what happened with Sarah since everyone was talking about it. But he has not reached out to any friends or family. One of the people he works with has contacted me though, and told me Jake is still openly very angry about what happened. He still believes the ring would have been a small price to pay for his happiness. Now that Sarah has been taken away, Jake has also shifted blame onto her, saying she's the crazy gold-digging woman who ruined his life. It seems all he can do is blame, and blame other people some more. Until he accepts fault in his own actions, then I don't think we can have a relationship. He's not going to do well in life if he can't take responsibility for his own actions. I just hope that some time alone wherever he chooses to go will help him to mellow out and understand where he went wrong. This is likely to be my last update here, unless something else goes wrong. And if no new posts show up in the coming months or years, then you'll all know everything is fine. At least as much as it can be, considering the situation. Final update, my son just left town. I was hoping for no more drama or anything of the like. But it just didn't stop. Yes, Jake sold his condo. For how much I don't know. But he probably made a profit flipping it. And last Saturday he pretty much just took whatever he could fit in his car and left. From what I know, the last few weeks have been hectic for my son. People all over town know what he did, because the gossip train never stopped. At one point Jake nearly got in a fight with a man at a bar because this guy called him out in front of everyone there. I tried to take the initiative by going to see him one last time. I hoped maybe we could talk things out and make amends before he left town. Because at this point I'd realized his moving away was the best thing he could do for himself. He'd already destroyed his own reputation. And he's better off starting over somewhere else. But when I got there and knocked on his door, he refused to open it. I tried to say I only wanted to talk, and he told me through the door that there was nothing to talk about, other than the fact I ruined his life. There was a bit of a pause where he was only speaking intermittently, then he suddenly went on a rant about the ring, and how I should have just let Sarah keep it. Then went on to say that I should have also offered to help pay for the copy. But it didn't matter anymore. Sarah was confirmed crazy, and they're through for good. Just like he's through with me and his sister. Well, that got me mad, and I retorted that what he did was unacceptable. He assaulted his sister while stealing that ring from my house, for crying out loud. He's lucky I didn't have him arrested for that. And literally everyone who knew what he did was against him. That's the kind of red flag that shows you're in the wrong on a citywide scale. Then I told him to drop the act he's put up for the sake of pride. I said that I don't know if he rushed things with Sarah because he missed his mother, or because he's now the age I was when he was born, or whatever other reason he could have. But the fact still remains that he knew what he did was wrong, and just won't admit it. And I'm tired of trying to stick up for him. I didn't escalate the situation with anyone. He and Sarah did that. I'm tired of being blamed by him for his own wrongdoings. That's the sort of thing narcissists and cowards do. His mother and I raised him better than that. And he should know that his mother wouldn't have approved of his actions. But she's not here to say it. It doesn't matter who you are. If you steal something that's not yours, you can't go blaming the person you stole from for being mad about it and doing whatever they have to in order to get it back. There was a silent pause on Jake's end for a few seconds, and then he said, "Fuck you, Dad." After he said that, I could hear him crying and hitting things inside. That's when I noticed down the hall that one of Jake's neighbors was poking her head out her door. And she went back inside the moment I looked at her. Yeah, this'll end up right back in the gossip train. Jake refused to say anything more to me, so I just left. But when I was leaving the building, a police car pulled up right in front of the condo building. 2 officers got out of the car and asked my name. When I told them who I was, they said they had been called by someone in the building saying I was trying to break into their apartment. I said I had an argument with my son through his door. But I didn't once try to force my way in. And I only touched the door to knock. I told the whole story of what happened, and then pointed out which neighbor had been watching and listening. And that the building had CCTV. One of the officers went up to talk to the neighbor, while the other detained me with cuffs. He was very polite and said that the cuffs were just to make sure, since they don't know who's telling the truth. I said he's just doing his job, and he let me sit down on a bench nearby while we waited. The officer who went in the building called on the walkie after about 10 or 15 minutes. I'm not sure since I couldn't look at my watch. But he said that the neighbor's story more or less matched mine. And there was apparently more than one neighbor who was listening and who corroborated the same story. Then said he was going to talk to the building security and check the CCTV for that hallway. This took a fair bit longer. Again, I couldn't look at my watch. I just sat waiting on a bench near the entrance. But the kind officer pulled up a radio app on his cell phone and let me listen to it for a while to pass the time. The other officer finally called back on the walkie and told his partner to uncuff me because the CCTV had cleared me. He said that while the audio wasn't great, you could see and hear enough to show I never once tried to force my way in. I was uncuffed, and after the other officer got back, the two of them briefly spoke to each other for a moment, then asked if I was the guy whose son stole his dead mother's ring. I confirmed I am, and asked how they knew. Then they both said that they'd heard about it through the grapevine, and after hearing my version of events, they put 2 and 2 together. One of them said he was in the office the day Sarah was arrested. Apparently she was acting like a wild animal and trying to bite at them. And she made several threats from "Do you know who my parents are?" to "I'm going to castrate you." Although castrate isn't the actual word or words she used. I could only look embarrassed by it all. The officers told me to just go home. And that I was probably better off not coming back. I just nodded and left. I saw the police go back into the building as I was leaving. Likely to talk to Jake. I know it was him who called the police, because his neighbors messaged me later on social media saying that the officers gave him a solid chewing out for wasting police time to the point he was crying again. And I guess they also pointed out the ring incident and said that what he did was pretty low. I'm not sure how Jake took that. But it sounds like he heavily embellished what was going on when he called police. And from the time I first arrived to when the police got there, he had to have called them right around when we started talking through the door. He's beyond lucky they didn't arrest him for calling them over under false pretenses. I went home and was comforted by my daughter Amber. And she told me I tried, and it's not my fault Jake has gone bad. But it still hurt. I may have lost my son permanently. I ended up taking a day off work and locked myself in my office to play Dragon Warrior 1 on an NES emulator and eat vanilla ice cream to try and unwind. My son left town over the weekend. I may never see him again. But if I do, I hope he understands that I will always care about him. Yes, he wronged me. But I'm still his father. He could come to my door tomorrow wanting to talk, and I'd let him in. I just hope that day doesn't take 10 or 20 years. Added information. Some have wondered how small of a town I live in for things to have spread so fast. It's actually not that small of a town. More of a slightly below average size city. But one thing that made it possible for word to spread so fast was family. I personally come from a small family, but my wife came from one that's quite frankly huge, and very close-knit. When I tell you that her extended family is everywhere around the city, I am not exaggerating. I can run into one of them at any given time just walking around or going to the store. And a lot of these relatives are the type to love gossip. And when my son went looking for familial support for his actions online, that's when the gossip train started. First they told Jake off for what he'd done. Then they started telling everybody they know of what happened. I never wanted it to escalate like that. But it just did so on its own. It just turned into one of those 15 minutes of infamy situations for Jake, and should have died down quickly. But my son's ex Sarah only made it worse by telling everyone she knew in order to try and get support. That basically doubled the problems as both of them lost all their friends over the situation. And so many people I don't know messaged me that I never gave my contact details to. I have no idea how they got them, but it doesn't really matter anymore. Now that my son has left, people have simmered down about it. I managed to get most of the extended family to take down their social media posts about Jake within the first week or two. But by then the damage had already been done anyway. I put out the word asking people to remove any posts made about the situation and essentially begged them to just let this end. I didn't want to be in the spotlight. I just wanted things to go back to normal. But the escalation by both Jake and Sarah only made things worse. Also, some wondered about the guy who recognized Jake in a bar and started a conflict with him. I've heard he was a neighbor of one of Jake's former friends. So it's no surprise he knew what Jake looked like if that really is the case. And yes, despite my age I do enjoy some old video games. I don't own any of the old consoles anymore. But I keep some of the games I loved when I was young as ROMs to play on my PC. They're a good way to unwind once in a while. Neither of my kids have had an interest in these old games. And my wife never cared for them either. So it was pretty much just me that likes them. But I don't play them frequently anyway. I play through Dragon Warrior once or twice a year at most. And I usually fast play it with cheat codes because I am not a skilled player. Never have been. Even used the old game Genie back in the day. Mini update, my son was a gold digger too? I did not expect to make another post on this account ever again, let alone one so soon after what was supposed to be my final update. But I was recently messaged by someone on social media using a burner account that said they had some extra details on Jake and Sarah that I didn't know. They wouldn't say who they are, other than the fact that they were someone close to Sarah. I was just hoping to put a bookend to this situation, and then here comes someone anonymous playing the deep throat informant. So I can't confirm or deny any of this information I got from them. From what they told me, apparently Sarah's parents are loaded. Well, the person stated my son Jake was only still with Sarah despite her being abusive and crazy because her parents are wealthy. Meaning, he was also acting like a gold digger. They said that he needed as impressive of a ring as possible to woo Sarah with. I'm not sure I want to believe it, but it feels like it makes sense on some level. If Jake wanted to marry into wealth, then a lot of his behavior as of late really seems to fit the situation now. I can't say if all of what was said is actually true, but if it is, it would mean that my son never really loved Sarah, and it was all about money. Sigh. Isn't it always these days? But in the end, I'm not sure it would have panned out the way Jake wanted. The person who messaged me said that Sarah was the black sheep of her family, a spoiled brat with endless demands, which is why her parents sent her to live out here to work a job and have a taste of real life. She was apparently extremely pissed off at them for not bankrolling her life anymore. The person messaging me said that Sarah figured that if she got married, her parents would accept her back, but she had such a high maintenance standard for potential partners that she couldn't hold one for long. Jake was the last in a line of several. She only started dating Jake because he had his own condo. So it was kind of a two-way gold digger situation, with Jake hoping to make bank by marrying her, and her hoping to get married so she could get back into her parents' pockets. I have a hard time wrapping my head around this. All of that kind of calls into question Sarah's parents saying she was once a good kid. Maybe she was, and then went crazy in her teens or something. I don't know. This could just be someone yanking my chain for fun, or it's possibly the whole reason my son tried to rush into marrying Sarah. Either way, it's left me with more questions about my son than ever, but he isn't here to answer them anymore. So I'm just distraught about the whole situation. My daughter Amber said that she believes what this person told me and that Jake has acted like he wanted to be rich ever since he inherited money from his mother after she passed. I think I'm going to need another day of retro gaming on my PC and some tubs of ice cream. Amber said cherry ice cream would be more fitting than vanilla this time. Not sure if that's some other modern reference I don't understand, but I think I just need a mental break. I'd like to take a vacation to the coast. I don't have the time right now, maybe in the spring. I am beyond seriously hoping this is the last update I have to post. I just want to be done with this situation. I'm going to be having Christmas without my son for the first time in over 20 years. It's even sadder that my wife is gone too, just me and my daughter now. At least my wife's extended family are very supportive and we'll be seeing them soon on Christmas Eve. Let's see what the community have to say. Teeny Drake says. Got a bit too cartoonish when she pushed over the kid. Polyfuckery say. Yeah, that was a little much. Her beating down the door with an axe also pretty sus. Devil Mouse 5386 says. Right? Mentioning the fingerprints is funny, like dude watches too much CSI. They aren't going to run fingerprints for an attempted break-in. Thieving Willow says. Especially when there's supposedly already clear video of it. Yep, the person we have on tape holding the axe definitely touched the axe, smiley face. Curzan says. Police don't say nah, we don't need that evidence, we have enough. Any public defender is going to argue that the footage is not clear enough to identify her. The prints make it indisputable. Chubby Train says. The anonymous email too. This story has way too many details. As if someone crafted it. If someone is grieving his family and his wife, he wouldn't care about some anonymous email and update it in detail to Reddit. Explain it to me, like Ima says. Hey guys, actually Sarah is like rich and stuff and my son is also a gold digger, so like they were both gold diggers. Sarah was gonna marry my son without knowing him really well, and then her parents would be really happy about that for reasons, and then they were both gonna be rich maybe? My daughter says I should eat cherry ice cream. It's some kind of young folk reference I believe. Okay, bye. Ragged Claus _silent CS says. The fact that she was using an axe makes it a possible threat to life, but I assume they are living in a place where not much happens. When my stalker did a B&E, cops didn't care to take fingerprints. Glittering War 5748 says. Why? When I had a break-in they sent a dude around to fingerprint everything they may have touched. Dear police, not police? Devil Mouse 5386 says. But there was no actual break-in and it's pretty much just vandalism. Police don't bust out the forensics for this stuff. Hot Mezza says. Welp, I thought this story was over, but I needed more internet points, so here's another implausible update for ya. Converge Cult 15 says. For me it was the sigh. Isn't it always these days? And the coworker reaching out to him to tell him his son is angry and blaming him. I don't know a single adult that would call the parent of someone they work with. DeJosser says. And the entire city knowing and caring this much about some dude nicking his mom's ring to the point of his ex-friend's neighbor starting a fight in a bar? Catching, Fiendfire say. I agree, and the mom was pregnant too? I am always suspicious when things start to play out like a movie or a TV show. Ioteth Bent Pyramid says. I agree, and the mom was pregnant too? Next update, it's twins. Evil Shenanigan says. And Jake is actually the father. Anui 0025 says. The pregnant woman is also his dead wife, she faked her dead years ago. Obi Riseroni says. And that child? Albert Einstein. Jack, Jen say. Right? Lamau who believes this? Silent Act 191 says. Oh, what could I write next? Right, I'll make something up about how my daughter calls my son a simp. But I don't know that word, even though it's a Google search away, or I could ask for an explanation. I'm still gonna bring it up though because it's totally relevant. Old Spice smells nice says. That's what got me, whatever that means. That and just too many dramatic updates. Red shirt, brown coat says. Next update, it turns out this was all just a dream. Sreydank says. Nah, calling your son who is likely grieving the loss of their mother a simp was the tipping point to me. No way a parent wouldn't be devastated their kid was acting like this after already losing a parent. The op was way too detached and cold through all of this. Like a third party telling a story about a friend of a friend. Bambina 821 says. For me it was that femme fatales like Sarah go cray cray, like there are people who show no signs of psychosis, but then greed drives them around the bend. Then, of course, there's the grandfather who designed and crafted a ring so exquisite, so divine that it can even be copied without spending a fortune. I guess if you can't get a publisher interested in your cliched ideas, you either self-publish or post on Reddit. Melodic_yer says. Simp, which I as an old person don't know what means. Ah yes, simp, I googled it and find it a fitting term. Lamau. Bizarduous Task says. It lost me after the daughter knew he'd called her brother because of his special ringtone, geez, rolling eyes face. Coda Verity says. For me I went wait when he started describing the ring tbh. Tripper Day says. The best submissions here require suspension of disbelief. Adorable Gadget says. It would fit his son's motivation and sudden change in behavior. It is sad that in way losing his wife caused him to also lose his son, albeit in a roundabout way. And damn it, I want cherry ice cream now. Cypher says. Thrifty's black cherry ice cream is divine. Adorable Gadget says. This unlocked a core memory for me. My aunt always used to take me to Thrifty's for ice cream as a child whenever I visited. Cypher says. A lot of people's core memories, I imagine. My dad would take me to Thrifty's for ice cream after school a lot. Every now and then, I'll stop by Rite Aid for a scoop of black cherry or coconut pineapple, his favorite flavors. Dextrous_Maximus says. Rite Aid sells ice cream? 7 Grendel says. I'm up in Canada. Here I recommend the Chapman's Blackjack frozen yogurt. It's got black chocolate and cherry bits mixed in. Lou at work says. If you are in the right part of the country, Kawartha Dairy is top tier. No, Cryptographer 6604 says. The world must know of Kawartha Dairy's superiority. Pilgrim_of_Reddit says. Agree with this. Heracles 1994 says. Black Raspberry Thunder is the way to go. Little_season 3410 says. Breyers has a black raspberry with dark chocolate chunks that is phenomenal, so I am willing to bet I'd like your blackjack one, too. MS Steak 911 says. That is one of the absolute best. Freaky Pickles says. They had the funky shaped scoop, right? And 3RD, Proble 3MS says. Oh hell yes. Gimme that rectangular blob. It's honestly not that much more ice cream than a normal scooper, but having a Thrifty's scoop just felt more satisfying. And also, you can purchase their scooper. But it's like $20 something odd dollars though. Freaky Pickles says. This takes me right back to middle school. We always saved some lunch money to get ice cream at Thrifty on the way home. I think it was like 50 cents way back in the dark ages. For some reason, we always thought it was fancy because it was a different shape. Chef Kimberly says. Our core memories are built around Friendly's black raspberry ice cream. Ruby Gem Wolf 339 says. I think deep down inside the son was just waiting for the right opportunity to get a hold of some of his mother's more valuable items but never could justify it. The condo wasn't enough for him, he wanted more and he thought Sarah could give it to him. But he didn't realize he went with the one person that is nuttier than peanut butter. He saw a girl with rich parents and saw dollar. But in the end Sarah was just going send him rocking into the poorhouse or run off with the ring as soon as she got it. Also thanks, I want ice cream now. Cake_cookie says. They may have made it work together. I'm guessing she would have gotten pregnant quick after the wedding and then basically her parents would have to pay to see their grandchild ran. ETA, should I run out for a pint of Cherry Garcia right now? McKiller, Bunny says. I'm jealous now. They stopped selling Cherry Garcia here years ago. It was my favorite flavor by a mile. Now I indulge on the rare occasion I find it when visiting another country. Karyovic11 says. It was my second favorite after Chunky Monkey, neither have been seen in the shops here for ages. Wondering_Scholar6 says. Some people just can't handle having money, they become horrible people. It's been studied actually, gaining wealth makes many people less empathetic. Clearly the sun was on the high side of that scale. Smutterbum says. Is the cherry ice cream slang for something? I found that line so confusing. Zanity, Zan says. Yeah, I must be old too, 'cause if that's a reference to something, I don't get it. Suspicious Advice 217 says. The only thing that came to my mind was that's the cherry ice cream on top. But I don't know if that's anywhere close. D. Little Fluffy Bun says. I'd like to know too. Thalassophobic_whale says. I try to look at it this way, losing his wife helped reveal who his son really was. One was a devastating loss, the other will help prevent even more heartache later on. What if this wasn't enough for Sarah's family and she leaves him and takes the ring? What if he kept trying to keep her and resorted to even more theft and deception, causing his family further heartache? Good riddance to bad rubbish and cheers to that anonymous person providing the missing pieces of the puzzle. Fortellils33 says. The thing is, I don't think that's who Jake is. It'd be easier to look at it from the angle of a rookie athlete who went broke after retirement. A condo, at least in my area, to buy in full is at least $150,000. So a healthy down payment on a, probably nice 2-bed/1.5 bath, condo is substantial, and a free new car is also cool. Then he probably still had money left over for a shopping spree. He got used to a life that Sarah was also partially used to, and she got a taste again, which altered his taste. Money can bring out something in people that they might not otherwise have access to. C. Ferrell says. It's weird reading this post because it's like an extreme cartoon version of my Bill and his wife. My Bill used to be the most down-to-earth person. When he was a teenager, if he wanted something he'd work for it and do odd jobs. Then he met his now wife. It's been 10 years, they live in a house they can afford because she didn't like that my other Bill bought a big expensive house, so she had to go bigger. They've remortgaged twice and my Bill is working a job he hates, far from what his PhD is in, because it's the only way to bankroll their lifestyle. For her it's not their money making her insane, it's the money other people have brings out crazy jealousy. She actually had one of those screaming tantrums at me one time when I refused to tell her how much me and my husband earned. It's so weird. Zukazook says. I finished my cherry ice cream yesterday. Now I have no ice cream, sadness. Collins4816 says. Ben and Jerry's Cherry Garcia. The best. Melanie73 says. Get a tub of White House flavor. It's vanilla ice cream with maraschino cherries throughout. It's an old-fashioned flavor but delicious. Dark Star 0915 says. Up until now I didn't know cherry ice cream exists, so I need a tub of that too. Dweebobble says. Yeah, this lost me at the mall scene. Too many brainwaves says. Not when she ran out of the jewelry knocking stuff over? Smiley face. Ninja Defenestrator says. Or when she knocked over a small child with a heavily pregnant mother. Funny how he refuses to post pictures of the ring because reasons. Zootnote Dingo says. I liked the attempted house break-in. Ninja Defenestrator says. There were at least 3 of those. Daughter Earth Palette says. My mill watches Indian soaps all the time. This reads exactly like those plots. Frickine says. I said to myself, how can she slap? After the slapping, so apparently you're not the only one getting Indian soap vibes. I know that was a reality show, but it was about as real as this story, so I think it counts. Lolly Bat Stuck says. I was so worried I was going to see comments of people not immediately rolling their eyes at this. So glad that wasn't the case. SPS_agent says. Every update this guy has posted is called out almost instantly. At this point, it's a bit of a meme. Memelita says. Lost me at Simp. Handsome a Princess says. Particularly the whatever that means. Way too self-aware. Wonder what the cherry versus vanilla reference is. Dragon Esophages says. 'Cause this update is the cherry on top. Stut John's new squeegee says. The simp thing did it for me. C. Ferrell says. I believe it's the cherry on the top. That's how I saw it anyway. Penny79 says. Agreed. All those kids these days references show him up. I'm 43. Mid-40s people don't talk like this. We either know what simp means, or we don't use it at all. We either understand the references our kids make, or we don't use them altogether. We don't feel the need to defend playing video games, because it's no longer a kid's thing to do. We don't talk about people these days, because it's still our day. Baba Yaga in Yo Face says. Simp scampi, simp gumbo, jumbo simp, simp fried rice. Put another simp on the Barbie. Sweet child off swine says. Lost me at brood and then lost me even more at simp. Is this a teenage girl or 90-year-old woman? Spoppy Ive says. Is this the same one who called him a miser? Sweet child off swine says. I think the girlfriend called up a miser and the teenage daughter called her brother a brood and a simp. Cake Bats says. This story would only make sense if it was the special ring from LOTR that warps your mind, and that's why Sarah is obsessed enough to knock over a small child and break into his house with a fucking axe. HBC Bose says. The sheer volume of text lost me. What kind of single dad would take the time to write this stuff? Chrissy Pants 4000 says. Exactly. The dedication, the time commitment. Also, do 46-year-old men go to the mall together? Spoppy Ive says. I couldn't finish it to the point I was at last time, but I know I've read it before. Is this the same one where the totally real young girlfriend in her early 20s uses a word like, miser? Dweebobble says. Ding ding ding. Carlos Fair 2201 says. Me at the simp comment. Bree 214 says. Yeah, as soon as I saw simp, whatever that means, I'm like, yeah, this story probably isn't real. Space Glitter says. I'm so glad, it seems like so many of us had the exact same thought. Lamau. Ibranawi Gas says. Lost me at the point where the girl's parents called him up for more information, apologized for their daughter, and were paying half her rent and now cut her off. Yeah, okay. Dweebobble says. At the rate the storytelling gets sloppy, I half expect the final installment to be about 350. Moonskoi says. Who TF uses the term miser? Chicken Fight Your Mom says. And what 16-year-old calls someone a brute? Mint_manity says. Me at the jeweler singing its praises part. Ethel Tefelmir says. More holes in this story than Swiss cheese, but for me the description of this allegedly dazzling ring was a real eye roller. Very little of what he says makes sense as how you describe an ultra-valuable ring, including but not limited to the light sapphires. And going on about how the band was really thick? Sounds like the dude learned everything he knows about jewelry down at the pawn shop. Aggravating Corner 2 says. It just got way too elaborate. Daisy says. Many red flags for me as well. I thought it was sus that he refused to put up pictures of the ring. Or at least thought it was convenient. FR1LLH0U says. And all the slapping. It's like a soap opera. Chrissy Pants 4000 says. Design in Z Wild says. I got bored at the jeweler's scene. Also happy cake day. Lyrial Nix says. So it was kind of a two-way gold digger situation. Insert that meme image of the two Spider-Men pointing at each other. Sunny_days_head says. Gimme your money. No, gimme your money. Sir me you kid on, he says. More like give your parents money, they both didn't have money themselves, just their parents. Christian Duty says. I'm tired of this writer trying to make this character old, talking about modern references. I can believe everything else, but that's something that's just irking me. Lactose Talentless says. Like, if something his daughter says doesn't ring a bell or confuses him, why does he choose to relay it to us? I'm sure she also said a bunch of shit that did make sense to him. So yeah, I don't buy the old guy thing either. Also constantly saying kids these days. Sounds like he's writing in character and overdoing it. And crazy gold digger screeches and knocks over a kid, so old guy comforts heavily pregnant mom lol. Christian Duty says. I can buy knocking over pregnant women more than that simp comment, that's simply jarring. At least we got mysterious contact, wife's extended family, and the brat's rich in-laws for season 2. Too many brainwaves says. You're not, gold, digging the way he's simping for some good old retro gaming? Silent Act 191 says. Writes himself into a corner. Oh I gotta bring the word simp up, but also pretend like my character doesn't know that word, even though it's a Google search away. But it's relevant to the story totally. This bitch is bonkers says. Thank you. Not sure if that's some other modern reference I don't understand. He's trying to make himself sound like he's 80 but has 2 youngish children. The fuck outta here. Hulkling's boyfriend says. He even uses the English original name for Dragon Quest. It hasn't been called Dragon Warrior since 2005. Precedent says. I am one with op and not wanting more updates. This has gone far beyond the line. Steve Hawkins says. In the next episode, we find out that Grandma was the original gold digger and passed that trait down to the son. Joking. DH Grew 207 says. I dunno, this reads like a poor junior high writing assignment, who goes around booing people, sticking their hand out for a ring like a bad rom-com, then becomes a axe-wielding wannabe thief that parks in the driveway. Also, why not show a picture of the ring? That likelihood that them getting the exact ring made from a picture is low, and even then so what? So now 2 or 3 people in a population 8 billion have a ring like that. Limp_Will16 says. I would even accept a picture that isn't the ring, but this is close the fact that he wouldn't even do that. Mr. Ugly Face says. There's always some reason they can't provide a picture. A simple and identifying picture. L'Oreal Ash Blonde says. The booing was a hilarious mental image. I read the rest of the story imagining them all as Sims. Fluffykins0801 says. You know, half the time I read stuff on here I'm always left going huh, well maybe my family isn't as crazy as I thought. Winky Nerdo says. Many years ago, before Reddit was even born, I saw a book named All Families Are Psychotic. We were going through our own familial breakdown at the time, and I can confidently say I've never doubted the veracity of the title. Aromatic_Razmatez says. My therapist once said every family. You'd think maybe some families would get by without any crazies. Nope. It is absolutely every family, and I have found that so reassuring over the years. Illustrious_Tank_356 says. In Chinese, we say every family has a difficult book to read. Aromatic_Razmatez says. I love this. Hollow Shell Screeching says. My thoughts are usually well at least my family's tolerable crazy, okay, so it's more at least my beloved smother is too far away to do much damage. Aromatic_Razmatez says. My family is nuttier than a shithouse pile, but we'd never fucking steal from each other. Come on. Sunnyclaw says. Mine wouldn't have. Even had one toss a tantrum in the mall, although it was just crying on the floor as a grown-ass adult until daddy paid for the golf shoes she wanted. But I'm no contact these days with all but a few of them who aren't that kind of nuts, so not my problem anymore. DHX Eats a Disorder says. Yeah, when my brother died his dad proved he's still crazy and my family proved saner than I thought. Fluffykins0801 says. Sorry for your loss. Mango_script says. 2 gold diggers put their heads together and still came up with 0. Shame. I feel for Op, but it sounds like his son needs to learn his lesson the hard way. Adorable Gadget says. The hilarious thing is if they worked together the plan probably would have worked. But the girlfriend was too demanding and the son didn't want her to know he was after her money. So in short, as always, healthy communication would have saved this couple. Mango_script says. Miscommunication strikes again lol, it couldn't have happened to a better couple. Classy Lady says. Right, a quick pregnancy and a quicker marriage, bam, back in her parents' good graces. What a dummy. Adorable Gadget says. Was thinking that. Get knocked up and milk that grandchild for all they're worth. Illustrious_Tank_356 says. If that's the plan she should have just accepted a piece of leaf as the ring. Walking Talking Dread says. My brother stole all my mom's jewelry while she was in hospice and pawned it for drugs. I always wanted to wear her wedding ring someday. I think I'll always hate him. Lady Night Cake says. That is awful, I'm so sorry. I don't blame you for hating him. Sweetie Darling 77 says. It's like Gollum's My Precious all over again, smiley face. No Permit 369 says. So. I guess nobody figured out that it was the ring's evil curse that caused all this? Only female bloodline of the mother can wear it or else it will infect you with greed. Also, damn kids these days are so entitled, am I right or am I right? Black Cat Mumsy says. Ha. Don't be surprised if a curse pops up in the next update of this totally completely 100% true story lol. Red Best says. A curse and then someone having a heart attack on the front lawn. Lactose Talentless says. He saw entitled people at the grocery like twice this week. It's out of control. Toxic. FR1LLH0U says. This is way too over the top to be true. Sarah is cartoonishly villainous. Cat Destroys Universe says. When she pushed over the kid, I was waiting for her to follow up by shoving a rocket launcher up the pregnant woman's vagina and firing. FR1LLH0U says. Oop, and his friend would have seen her attempt to fire the rocket launcher, leap across the mall and disarm her. Everyone would then clap. Cat Destroys Universe says. But the rocket launcher would misfire, the rocket would ricochet off the ceiling, and graze past Sarah, knocking off her wig and making her face go red and her ears shoot steam. In the background, eclairs would be blown up. Current attempt 6504 says. The grandfather that forged this ring wasn't an evil wizard, was he? Patine Pusher says. She takes my money AI, when I'm in need. Babsarella WT says. Oh, she's a triflin' friend indeed. Jazzy Squid says. Oh, she's a gold digger way over town. Rietchespiker says. That digs on me. Jazzy Squid says. Now I ain't saying she a gold digger. Big Fat Pup says. I don't think there's a ring judging by the wording of why no pictures will be shared. Pork79 says. It's too beautiful, everyone who sees it would copy it for tens of thousands of dollars and then it wouldn't be unique anymore. Kitch_Kath says. It's giving girlfriend in Canada vibes. Improbable Avocado says. This reminds me of my movie idea from when I was a kid. People always told me you should never hitchhike because the people who pick you up may have evil intentions. But they also said you should never pick up hitchhikers because they could have evil intentions. So I thought it would be a good movie where a hitchhiker with evil intentions gets picked up by a driver with evil intentions. Like a Freddy vs. Jason battle royale or something. Wow_that_guys_a_dick says. Hitchhiker, aren't you worried I'm a serial killer or something? Driver, not really. I mean, what are the odds of there being 2 serial killers in this car? Pink Rosebag says. Hikeback, an indie video game is like this. Robo Lincoln says. There is a missing update. The previous final update mentioned at the top of the new update where the son leaves town but not before calling the cops on Oop. Pand Zedmix says. I just read that. Here's my question. At one point Jake nearly got in a fight with a man at a bar because this guy called him out in front of everyone there. How did the dad know that specific detail? It's weird that he would just throw that in there with zero explanation of how he knows this. FR1LLH0U says. He does that throughout the story. He has random people contact him to update him on his son's activities to relay it to Reddit. Gangreless says. Omniscient narrator. Don Garda says. Sorry, but I don't believe a word of this story. When I got to the part about her knocking over a small child I really couldn't suspend my disbelief any longer. Birdie Tamps says. I also choose this guy's dead wife's ring. User Abe says. That last update kinda doesn't make any sense at all. She wasn't wealthy, her parents were, if this is to be believed. Why would his son try to marry into wealth when she'd already been cut off? She didn't live a lavish lifestyle, so why would he think that would change after marriage? Why wouldn't he just take a loan to buy an expensive ring, if it would assure him financial security? Very clearly just someone trying to stir the pot. Balance_warmth says. It seems like the idea was that her parents have cut her off for being irresponsible, but if she was getting married and becoming a good wife to a nice man, it's something they'd be willing to see as evidence she'd grown and matured and welcome her back to the family. Particularly if they had children, lot of parents are hesitant to keep children cut off once there are grandparents in the mix. Still absolutely may be bullshit, but at least that's the argument. Qualified Apathetic says. And it doesn't sound like she'd been disinherited or anything, just that they cut off the free ride. Even to the end, they seem pretty invested in getting her the help she needs and cleaning up her mess. Plus, there may be a trust fund she can't access until a certain age. Yukari Yakum0 says. I've heard of stupider plans. Young, dumb, and delusional. Makes sense when you remember that mixture is in play. Cascade says. I mean, parents got to die sometime. Even if there wasn't a straight inheritance involved, there can be a lot of perks in having wealthy relations. Job opportunities, loans, plus straight emotional blackmail if there's a few itty-bitty grandkids involved. Making a similar ring could have been a lot. They said 5x the money he had saved. She'd already almost broken up with him at that point, so he could be looking at tossing 10/20k down on a ring she could still walk away with. Where's his mum's ring was at least no money down. Not impossible, could be someone stirring the pot. However, if any of this was real, you would expect the op to be familiar enough with the situation to be able to spot wrong details of a troll attempt, or just ask for real names. Even if identifiable info was left out of the update. Scissor says, I think the son was aware that her family is wealthy, and she somehow believes if she gets married her family will start funding her spoiled lifestyle again. She may have, obviously wrongly, assumed that the son had a certain amount of wealth. He owns his own condo and nice car at a young age. If this story is true, it seems like the next update is going to be that son and crazy GF are trying to get pregnant/got pregnant as a way to get money and sympathy from her family. Part of me wants to think it's not true. It's so dramatic, but there's a lot of money-hungry, selfish people out in the world, and if two of them got together, who knows what kind of ridiculous measures they'd go to. Woman facepalming. Supa, the baked Wadalia says. 23 is too young to fuck your life up by being crazy. The blue Ninja Zero says. It's never too young to fuck your own life up with your own crazy. The Raven GRL says. I don't get the cherry ice cream reference either. Good riddance though. Bitter payment 7051 sades. Maybe this final update it's the cherries, on top from all this craziness, woman shrugging? Hence the cherry ice cream, shaved ice? I didn't know, embarrassed smiley face. Affectionate, Fig 9277 says. Is it maybe cherry because of all the red flags? My mum calls a red traffic light cherry green when someone goes through it lol. Lolithy Dreamer says. I don't think is a real story. In the beginning it had me hooked. I paused at simp, then the mall scene happened and I was really questioning the authenticity. Her shoving over the child of a pregnant woman is like Disney villain shit lol. My belief was stretched to the breaking point at her breaking down his door with an axe then leaving the axe lol. Plus if he had cams to capture it I can almost guarantee they wouldn't have fingerprinted the axe. It wouldn't be necessary. My house has been burgled and the police told me they rarely fingerprint. I'd the cherry ice cream reference. Casualty says. So in the end was Jake a simp, gold digger, or both? I need another update. Emo Hipster says. In the end Jake only ever existed in the mind of Oop, who made all this bullcrap up. No Permit 8369 says. None. The ring is cursed and the evil spread to him. He knew enough to get as far away as possible from its temptation. He couldn't say that out loud of course. I mean, the ring caused her to try and break in with an axe. Cat destroys universe says. Oop really needs to make sure we know he's old and out of touch with this modern day slang, and that back in his day, people had values. I bet he also shakes his head at that hippity hop all the kids these days are into. Also, I love the I just want to be done with this after he makes a whole new update because some stranger messaged him on social media. He's old, he doesn't know which social media it is, claiming to have further details. Check your Danish says. Sarah wanted the precious. Nia Little says. And then they all stood up and booed, eh? Wannabe librarian says. If this is true, and that's a very big if, there's also a chance that Jake could have fallen deep in lust, thinking Sarah was the love of his life and was just trying to keep her any way possible. By the sounds of her I doubt Sarah would have done any spending on Jake. I'd have difficulty believing a throwaway account or whatever you would call that. It could be anyone. Kitten bag. Imagine being dumb enough to think this shit was real. Nina_Gull says. Cool story. Starbucks and Taco Trucks says. Yeah, this one lost me at the third update. She tried to break in with an axe? Okay. Golden_Mundala says. Oop and his daughter have had so much trouble and heartbreak. I wish them both the best. Spiraxis Dragon says. I would love to know the jeweler's version of this story. Come to think of it, jeweler gossip must be up there with wedding baker gossip. Hunted 9 says. Simultaneous, but uncoordinated, gold digging does make sense. This whole situation reminds me of everyone that Darcy from 90 Day Fiancé has ever dated. You've got two parties trying to use each other for fame, but never coming clean about it and lying about everything. It always devolves into a toxic screaming mess. Autistically, Sad says. Funny enough, both could have lived a pretty basic life with easy access to both wills from either family, but their greed and unhinged behavior caused them to implode. Fuck if they sat down and just said, look, we are broke, Our family have money and we are both gold diggers, let's play the long con. They easily could have faked a marriage to each live a happy lavish lifestyle, supposedly. But people gonna people. Illustrious _tank _ 356 says. Well, true or not, the posts were well written and were a good read. Roy boy. Who can afford a lawyer but not a safe? Whose wife makes a will and gives their son money while her husband is doing shift work and can afford a safe? Why can't the jewelry go in the gun safe? Trank Dog says. Bullshit. Classic. Event 6 says. Guys, I think this dude owns the One Ring. Why else would people act like this over a ring? Maj2 _ Snowpea says. Psycho killer, qu'est-ce que c'est? No Permitati 369 says. Fa 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 fa, fa 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 fa. Goose _ Spy says. This is why you don't date Gollum. Juan Solo 6 says. I'm pretty sure I saw a movie about this,